Hi, this is The Philosophical Angle, and I'm your host, Chris Angle. I'm the author of 4 books on philosophy, one of which is The Philosophical Equations of Economics. These books are available free for viewing online at www.philosophypublishing.com. If you'd like to participate in the program with any topics, give us an email at the website, noted at the website. Along with me is my panelist and co-host and colleague, Rick Samuelson. Rick is a venture capitalist on the West Coast. Good to see you, Rick.
Good to see you.
The purpose of the philosophical angle is to examine the nature of concepts being used in current media and compare the essence of the concept with usage and circumstances in which the term is being used. And this week we're going to talk about why the left is really, they're compulsive liars. We've seen it, even the New York Times comes out and says, hey, we're going to start telling you the news now. Where were they before? On October 27th, the Rush Limbaugh radio program described from WikiLeaks how the Clinton campaign went out and used focus groups to understand what people wanted to see in Hillary as a president and how Hillary's images were formed from these focus groups. Depending on the group before which she speaks, she conformed to a predetermined image, and she even said that I'm going to have one opinion in public, and we're going to have another in private. So what's this all about? Why does the left have to lie? And this means that like in Hillary, we're not getting the real views of Hillary. We're getting from the left. We get a matrix of images of the potential for Hillary, the potential president of the United States. But in general, why must the left do this? Why can't they just present their real selves? President-elect Trump certainly presents his real self. Why the difference? Well, in order to answer this question, we first have to understand some of the very basic differences between the Republican outlook on political life and the Democratic outlook on political life. The primary difference, I believe, is the treatment of the means compared to the ends. Let's take an example. There are 2 primary founding documents in American history. First, as we all know, was the Declaration of Independence, and the second is the Constitution of the United States. The difference between these 2 documents is that the Constitution of the United States is the means relative to the political machinery by which the government lives by. It puts before the American society the overall general rules by which the government must operate relative to its constituents. The other document is the Declaration of Independence. This document is concerned with the ends to which society strives. That is, it is the result of the efforts of the individuals of our societies and their objectives. In the Declaration of Independence, the founders, through Thomas Jefferson, noted that the objective of the American society is to be life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I think we can all agree with that. I think everybody, our objective is to live our life, enjoy the freedom to make our own decisions, and pursue that which makes us happy and gives us goodness. I think we can all agree that that's how we operate in our lives. And the Constitution gives us the basic rules under which we may operate relative to the government to pursue that goal of happiness in our lives. So, for example, we buy a car that we like. We buy it with the objective that it provides a betterment in our life, which makes us happy and makes our lives more convenient. So let's say today our objective is making us happy is to go and buy some food to satisfy our hunger that we face every day. So we have to go to the grocery store, and we don't want to walk there, which is difficult and laborious, takes time. So we would prefer to do so in a car, which makes our life more efficient and thus easier. So we buy a car as the means to the objective. of course, the act of buying the car is also making us happy, but the real value in the car is the means to the final objective of going to get groceries, going shopping, going to visit grandma, going to visit somebody, to going on vacation, or whatever it is that makes that we strive to do to pursue our happiness. Another example is that we want to buy a house, and maybe some people like to have a big lawn in which they can make a garden, or they want to buy a big piece of property on which they can put a pool. Maybe they like to sit around the pool and enjoy the happiness that the pool provides in fulfilling our particular pursuit of happiness, and then particularly in this particular circumstances, it's sitting around the pool. Now I know I can hear some objections in the background. I can hear everybody's objection in that in this point, because I understand Democrats want the same thing. I've made a principle that applies to everybody. Some of them also want to sit by the pool, and they want to have cars, and everybody wants to pursue happiness. I know you guys want to point out that I really haven't pointed to any difference, and that's true. And thus the Democrats try to put out the same vision of the objective as the Republicans. But the Republicans want to put out this very objective of the pursuit of happiness, just like it says in the primary document by which this country was founded, namely the Declaration of Independence, and backed up by the U.S. Constitution. Thus, I think we can say that the Republicans are very strict, and they want to have the U.S. Constitution interpreted in its original meaning, and strictly interpreted. If we should change it, it should be by an amendment to the Constitution. It should not be changed by some liberal interpretation by a judge. So what is it? How is it that the Democrats are different from the Republicans in this regard? We know full well that liberal judges tend to loosely interpret the Constitution, but we also know that all Democrats pursue, just like Republicans, for their lives, the pursuit of happiness. Well, maybe the pursuit of happiness takes on or requires a liberal interpretation of the Constitution, which is less restrictive in its inherent operation and promotion of the growth of government. So why did the Democrats, in particular candidate Hillary, and why did they need to put on two faces, just like it says in the WikiLeaks documents, that it has one opinion in private and one opinion in public? Well, it is because the liberal leftist needs and requires greater restriction on the pursuit of happiness than does a conservative. It is because the ultimate objective of the pursuit of happiness needs to be limited. That's right. They want to limit your pursuit of happiness. And so now the question is, why should they do so? Well, it is because they feel that others who are not progressive, utopian Democrats need to be regulated and observed so that no wrong is done. They know that other persons, that other people are inherently bad. And because of this, that other person will exploit others. So those who are not the progressive utopian Democrat, they need to be regulated because they're bad. And the other person needs to be regulated, and this person, needs to be regulated because they need to have social justice. They need social justice to prevail. But it doesn't stop there. The social justice is not just in obtaining the means to the end. It is also inherent in the ends. What I mean by this is that they are total egalitarians in that social justice must be included not only in the means, but in the ends also. Ultimately, they are utopian egalitarians. And that is not only within the pursuit of happiness, that is your sacrifice or your means to an end objective, that all must have equal opportunity, which the Republicans would agree with, but also in the end of the pursuit of happiness, that is the end result, the end reward. The leftist is an utopian, egalitarian, and believes that all pursuits of happiness should be about equal, so that there is no social injustice, and that their utopian social justice should prevail. Not only on the income, not only going into the sacrifice, but on the end result, the reward. Thus, the ultimate difference is that the means to the pursuit of happiness is restricted, and the happiness that is obtained has to be restricted, so that not all are unequal, so that there isn't a 1% having so much more than others. This has to be pared down so that society takes on the feature of equality and society becomes a more egalitarian. Therefore, Hillary, during her candidacy, had to invest in focus groups to see what is politically popular, and then conformed her policies and her campaign rhetoric to fit what she found in the focus groups, to understand what are important to Americans these days. She did this so that she could become elected, and once elected, she would pursue those objectives that are not mentioned. That is, she would pursue the restrictive pursuit of happiness by restricting the means to the happiness, so that her leftist, utopian, egalitarian philosophy can prevail in the society of the United States. So, enough of me. Let's ask Rick what he thinks about the leftists, and do they lie a lot? Do they prevaricate? Do they dissemble? Do they? Is WikiLeaks right about all this? What do you think, Rick?
Well, the WikiLeaks evidence is pretty clear on the degree to which the Democrats fashion a different narrative for the particular group they're addressing. I mean, if you think about it, it's a pretty unwieldy coalition that the Democrats have. It's new immigrants, it's Silicon Valley, it's the Jewish establishment in New York, it's public sector unions, it's not all of these various and sundry groups are natural allies. It's a whole student movement, but in order for them to win elections, they have two core strategies. One is to gather funds, and one of the most amazing things about this recent election is the fact that Hillary managed to raise $1.3 billion to Trump's, roughly half that, and still lost. Now, how did she do this? How did she raise all this money? Well, obviously not from, minorities and students, right? It was from unions, Silicon Valley, Hollywood, the Jewish establishment, and others like that, and also business, right? Because one of the outcomes of this election, which is I think perhaps the most profound, has nothing to do with border security or rebuilding the military or anything like that. It's that business has been exposed as being a key ally in the social justice movement. All right, and I'll give you an example. Warren Buffett earned about $11 million in income, I think the last tax year, and paid about $1.3 million in taxes. I'm sorry, about $3 million in taxes. So a low tax rate. He complains about, right? Now, the first observation I would make is that it is quite remarkable that a guy who's worth something like 50 or 60 billion dollars makes $11 million in income. All right. Obviously, he has a whole retinue of lawyers who ensure that he only has to report $11 million in income. Otherwise, it's an absurd number. And I'll give you an example. As an investment banker, when I was at my peak income level, I was making a third of that, but I was paying about a third of it away in taxes, and that was living overseas. All right. So I was paying 3 times the level of taxes of Warren Buffett. No one attacks Warren Buffett. Why is that? Is it because he gives enormous amounts of money to the Democratic Party, which he does? All right, so there's a whole group of business leaders on Wall Street and elsewhere, very much like the Democratic policies, or they are indifferent between Democratic and Republican policies, and are quite happy to favor one or the other party depending on the circumstances. And one thing that happened is average Americans, particularly in the center of the country, said, well, that's not good enough. It's not good enough that you're indirectly favoring immigrants over existing Americans for jobs. It's not good enough that you're moving industrial operations out of the country at the expense of Americans. It's just not good enough, and we're going to throw the bums out, and that's what they did. And so one of the biggest messages of this election is a huge finger in the eye of corporate America. Corporate America is no longer trusted by quote unquote Republican or conservative voters, and they're going to have to deal with that.
So you mentioned that the Democrats took in a lot more campaign money than the Republicans. I think you said 1.3 billion as opposed to $700,000 or $800,000 on the Trump side. What do you think is the basic reason that even though the Republicans were outspent significantly, they were able to win the election?
I think it came from just one thing. Well, I think when it comes to using social media, Trump is unbelievably talented. Okay, and he outsmarted the Democrats at every turn with that. So that's one part of it. 2, he's the ultimate outsider, and this election was a vote against both the Democratic and the Republican parties in their current form. So this represents a major realignment, and all traditional Republicans should be running scared. And I'm getting messages from the Tea Party, and that's exactly the way they see it, and that's exactly the way they reported to me that they made 7 million phone calls. 7 million. That was the Tea Party to get the vote out. So, I mean, Donald Trump did a marvelous job, from an electioneering point of view, but at the grassroots level, the Tea Party was going full strength.
So you think that it was not an issue so much as it was an enthusiasm that won the election for the Republican side?
It was a rejection of the norm, the current norms, and current policy that's doing nothing for the middle of the country.
Okay, sounds like an economic issue.
It's full of contradiction. Of course, if Hillary Clinton is getting twice as much money as Trump, and he's a businessman, and she's a career politician, what that means is business favored Hillary Clinton by an enormous margin.
And when you say business, you mean big business?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Rick, I want to thank you for your input, and we're going to see everybody next week on the Philosophical Angle program. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.